Hillsborough County, Florida, July 4th, 2018. When you hear that sound, the sound of an ambulance, it's very familiar. You pull over on the side of the road to let the ambulance drive past. There's an emergency. You see the ambulance on your block down the street, and you wonder briefly, or at least I wonder briefly, what's going on there? Is everything okay? It means something. It means that something is wrong somewhere and someone is in need of emergency assistance. That's the only reason why people should call 911. 53-year-old Nicole Black needed emergency assistance. Her grandchild had ran a few houses down from her and told her, quote, "There's something wrong with Mama," end quote. Mama was 30-year-old, recent college graduate, Christen Galloway, mother of 3. She had just given birth to a baby 2 weeks prior, a baby boy named Jacob, by C-section. Miss Black would go to the bathroom and see her daughter slumped over the bathtub. Her lips were swollen. She was drooling. She was not doing well at all. She wasn't looking well at all. Miss Black thought maybe her daughter had fell and hit her head on the toilet. Perhaps with how her daughter now appeared, she was having a stroke. A call was placed to 911 at 3 a.m. on July 4th. 2 Hillsborough deputies arrived. Deputy Lamb, followed by Deputy Grace, led by Miss Black to where Crystal was. Crystal would tell them her eyes was extremely sensitive to the light. She complained of her head aching. She needed to go to the hospital. A fire rescue crew of 4 arrived at 3:17 a.m. Crystal is by now hysterically crying. There was only questioning by questioning. No, she hadn't taken any medication or drank any alcohol. Crystal vomited. They had alluded to the fact that she had been drinking and that this was a hangover. She should probably just sleep it off. No vitals, no blood pressure or temperature checks had been taken. A minimum care. Nothing. Only questioning. Mrs. Black called 911 for assistance. She asked a number of times, quote, "Are you taking my daughter to the hospital?" end quote. Morris responded, quote, "It looks like she had too much to drink," end quote. He added that there wasn't any reason to take Crystal to the hospital. He also told Mrs. Black she couldn't afford an ambulance ride, which would cost $600 to just drive 3 blocks. They would ask Mrs. Black did she even want to pay this, that this would set her back, and that she would have to pay for it. Mrs. Black recalls both deputies had said this. At 3:17, a fire rescue squad arrived. Lieutenant Morris, Acting Lieutenant Barton, and fire medics Sweeney and Martin. The cost of the ride, whether or not had Crystal been drinking. Why had they assumed that Nicole Black and Crystal Galloway couldn't afford the $600 fee? Miss Black would later add they never even asked if she had medical insurance, only assuming that she didn't. Crystal, laying on her bed underneath the covers, begged for her life. She begged for help, screaming and yelling she needed to go to the hospital. Mrs. Black was watching as her daughter was suffering. All these emergency care providers discussed was the bill and whether or not that this family could afford it, being that Crystal just had a new baby. And it didn't look like they were going to provide Crystal a ride inside the ambulance. Mrs. Black begged the crew of men, the 2 deputies, and now the 4 medics. 6 men were there. She begged, could someone help her get her daughter down the stairs so she can get her to the car. 13 minutes. This 911 call took 13 minutes. They obliged to help. Crystal, still conscious, was able to walk to a chair where several of the men was able to get her down the stairs. On the car ride to the emergency room, Crystal had started to have seizures. I can't even imagine the hell that Miss Black was going through watching her daughter just suffering right in front of her, and she couldn't really do anything but try to drive as fast as she could to the hospital. The paramedics did too. Their location is stationed right at the hospital where Crystal and her mother had begged to take her. Temple Terrace Emergency Room, operated by Brandon Regional Hospital. The center was unequipped to treat stroke patients. Now, this was said by the Tampa Bay Times. Crystal had to be airlifted to Tampa General Hospital. There, a CT scan revealed that she had brain bleeding. She slipped into a coma. Crystal Galloway would pass away on July 9th, 5 days later, and just days before her 31st birthday, leaving her mother to care for her 2 young daughters and newborn son. A 10-week investigation started. The paramedics had falsely logged the call as, quote, patient not found, unquote. Not surprising. Even stating that Mrs. Black said that she would, quote, rather take her daughter to the hospital, end quote. Again, not surprising. Also saying the 911 caller only wanted help getting her daughter down 3 steps. Cover-ups and lies. Everyone involved to be suspended with pay as a punishment for sheer negligence. No. Miss Black, she wanted them fired. She had every right to feel this way. It was announced that all 4 medics would face discipline. Morris, who worked for the department for 6 years, was fired for failure not to provide adequate care that night. Morris would fight the termination. Some were demoted, suspended without pay for 30 days, blah, blah, blah. You know the rest. A separate investigation by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office cleared the deputies involved with any wrongdoing. We will review the policies to make sure that this doesn't happen again. In other words, we will review these policies, blah, 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 just in case another one of the life-saving crew decides that maybe this family appears to not be able to afford this $600 or more fee for the ambulance services. Nicole Black never thought a life-saving call would end in her daughter's death. Remembering the life of Crystal Galloway. Rest in peace. I left the links of the articles I used and several others if you'd like to follow up on this case. I do believe that Crystal Galloway's mother had issued a lawsuit against Hillsborough. I hope she did. But my thoughts really on this was, I remember years ago when I was a teenager, I'd actually called the ambulance and they came and they took me. And I also remember even recently when I was working with the elderly clients, I would call the ambulance for various reasons. I even had to call the ambulance if they fell, because in a certain facility that I worked at, it was against the rules for me to pick them up. So I had to call the ambulance, and every time it would even be the same set of men sometimes. And they would do their job. I'd sign paperwork and they would leave. So I just find it just appalling that these men got there and they were discussing a bill based on the fact that there was a new baby now in the situation and that they felt that this family couldn't afford it. That's horrible. They were there to do a job that they didn't do. And they knew that they were wrong. That's why they lied and said the caller wasn't there, or the caller just wanted help getting down 3 steps. They tried to cover up, and we know that's what they do. And maybe Crystal Galloway could have been saved. Who knows? Because she wasn't given that opportunity to even find out. Because we had someone say, "Can you afford $600? It's 3 blocks down. Why don't you just take her yourself?" Someone decided whether or not this family could pay the bill. And that's terrible. So now we have young children, a baby that won't even know his mother. Maybe because a bunch of healthcare providers decided that she should probably find other means to get her to the hospital. Just a story that I remembered. And I hope that this never happens again. I'm even scared to Google it because it probably has. And I don't feel, I read a few articles. I didn't see anything say that she felt that it was a racial issue. If she felt like that inside, I don't know. But the articles that I read, I didn't see that. So basically, it could be anyone. It could be anyone listening to this video, someone calling for you, or you calling for someone, and they may get to the atmosphere and just decide that you can't afford this. And it's not their decision to decide.